Okay, so, there's this drug ketamine, right? And it's kind of blowing up in the UK right now. I mean, it's gone from like this fringe thing to a real mainstream thing, especially with like the younger crowd.
Interesting.
We're talking a 30% jump in use year on year with 16 to 24-year-olds.
Wow.
And some sources are saying it's even rivaling like cocaine and ecstasy for this generation.
It's crazy how quickly these things can change, isn't
It
it?
really is, and that's what we're going to get into today, this whole ketamine world,
Right.
And you've given me some really interesting sources here, so we're going to look at this
Mhm.
whole Generation K culture in the UK, hear from some people who actually use it, recreationally.
Right.
Then there's this whole surprising past as veterinary anesthetic.
Oh, wow.
Then we got to face the serious stuff too, the addiction, the health problem.
Right.
But then we get to the really interesting part. It's potential as a treatment for mental health and addiction.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
And then we'll even try to wrap our heads around what the science says about ketamine's effect on the brain.
That's the big question, isn't it? How can one thing do all this?
It really is. So let's just jump right in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so this Generation K thing in the UK,
Yeah.
it seems like ketamine isn't just like around, it's like a normal part of life for a lot of younger people.
Yeah, it's everywhere. And,
Yeah.
the sources are calling it a staple at this point.
A staple, wow.
Like a basic necessity for a lot of these young folks.
That's wild. And, the sheer amount they're talking about in these sources,
Oh, yeah.
hundreds of grams a week being sold.
That's huge.
It's insane.
Yeah, it really gives you a sense of how widespread it's become
Yeah, and it's not hidden anymore either. It's just like out there.
out in the open.
And it seems like there are a bunch of reasons for this, For one, it's cheap,
Yeah, much cheaper than other drugs.
like way cheaper than cocaine in the UK.
Yeah, especially now. Cocaine's pretty pricey.
Yeah, so that's going to be a big factor, right?
Huge factor. I mean, who wouldn't go for the cheaper option?
And it's versatile too, right?
Italy.
Like people use it to party, to chill out, to get all introspective.
I mean, you can find it in pretty much any setting these days.
It's crazy. And that's part of the appeal too, right? It's not just one thing.
Exactly. It appeals to all sorts of different people.
And then there's like this whole subculture around it.
Yeah.
The Ketty dance, like it's changed how people move in clubs, right?
It's a whole different vibe.
And then there's the Ket Olympics.
Oh, man, the Ket Olympics.
People doing these wild stunts.
I've heard stories.
After taking tons of it.
It's all fun and games until someone gets hurt, right?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but it can get pretty out of control.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not just clubs either, right? Like
Yeah.
people are watching, get this, David Attenborough documentaries,
Right.
specifically Blue Planet, while they're on ketamine.
I mean, I guess it makes sense, right? You're like underwater.
Yeah. And they even use headphones like to amplify the whole underwater feeling.
Oh, wow. That's intense.
It is. And that's what I mean about the versatility. Like, who would have thought?
It's crazy. You never know what people will come up with.
But here's where things get really, really interesting.
Okay, I'm listening.
One of our sources calls it like cognitive dissonance. Interesting.
Yeah.
People think of ketamine as like this wonky, silly horse tranquilizer.
Yeah, like it's a joke.
Right. Almost a joke.
Yeah,
But the thing is, it is a horse tranquilizer.
right.
It is a powerful anesthetic. I mean, and as we're going to talk about,
Yeah.
it can have some really serious consequences.
Yeah, definitely.
Like piss and blood is serious.
No joke. I mean, it's important to remember that.
Yeah, people think it's all fun and games, but it's a serious drug.
Right. It can mess you up.
So let's back up a bit. Talk
Okay.
about where it all started, from horse tranquilizer to party drug.
Right. A long and winding road.
Apparently, ketamine was first made back in like 1962
Yeah, way back.
by this chemist named Calvin Stevens.
Never heard of him.
Yeah, and it was called CI581.
What a name.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Catchy.
Then it got all these street names: Special K, Rhino Smasher, Wonk.
Wonk. That's a new one.
Yeah, they're all kind of strange, right?
Yeah, but I guess they make sense in a way, given the effects.
Yeah, so the real purpose of ketamine at first was like as a safer anesthetic.
Right. Something that wouldn't mess with your breathing so much.
Yeah, and that's why it was so important during the Vietnam War.
Right. Battlefield medicine and all that.
Yeah, American soldiers, it was a big deal.
Can imagine saving lives in those crazy conditions.
And you know what? It's still used by medics today.
Wow, really?
In emergencies and stuff.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and it even got FDA approval in 1970.
Officially official.
Yeah, as an anesthetic.
It's crazy how something can go from the battlefield to the operating room.
Isn't it? And then the whole thing shifted in the 80s.
Right, party time.
That's when it started showing up in clubs and stuff.
Yeah, and those nicknames, Special K, cat Valium really stuck.
It's like a pattern, right?
What do you mean?
Something gets developed for like medicine, and then bam, people figure out you can get high off it.
It happens all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah, makes you wonder what else is out there, you know?
What other innocent-looking compound is actually a party drug in disguise?
Right, exactly. And I mean, sometimes it goes wrong, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Big time. And that's what brings us to the serious stuff.
Yeah, the dark side.
Addiction and the health problems and this whole Bristol bladder thing.
That's a scary one.
Yeah, it's like a geographical term for a medical condition. That's how bad it is.
That's insane.
And, you know, we've got this guy, Jack, long-term user, and his story is intense.
Okay, what happened?
2 to 3 grams every single day.
Whoa, that's a lot.
Yeah, his reasons. Wanted to be creative, wanted to escape.
Classic, right?
Yeah, and his tolerance was through the roof.
How much was he taking?
1 gram line, just normal for him.
That's insane. I mean, at that point, you're just chasing the dragon, right?
Yeah, and he was mixing it with cocaine, too.
Oh, no, that's a bad combination.
They called it Calvin Klein, or CK.
What?
I know, it's weird, but that's what they called it.
I guess it kind of rhymes, right?
Yeah, I guess so. And he was seeing stuff, too, like fractals.
Visuals, that's pretty common with ketamine, right?
Yeah, but it's scary, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And then, the worst part,
What?
he's pissing blood and white red cells because of the ketamine.
Oh, man, that's awful.
Yeah, he even references this poem with the line, red strands leaking from an orifice. Like,
That's dark.
it's really dark, and he knows he's hurting himself, but he can't stop.
That's classic addiction, isn't it? You know it's bad, but you can't help yourself.
Exactly. And he even compares quitting to the smack scene, like heroin.
Whoa, that's intense.
Yeah, and he says he was using it to, like, self-medicate,
Right, to numb the pain.
to get into this, like, fugue state,
Yeah.
you know?
Dissociation. That's what ketamine does. It detaches you from reality.
Yeah, and that's the problem. It seems like an easy fix, but it's not.
Right, it's just masking the underlying issues.
And the damage it does to your bladder, it's really bad.
Yeah, what exactly does it do?
Okay, so basically, the ketamine and its metabolites, they irritate and damage the lining of your bladder.
Like the cells that are supposed to protect it?
Yeah, the epithelial cells.
Okay.
And they're supposed to protect the bladder wall from the urine, right?
Right, makes sense.
But when they're damaged, the urine can leak through, and that causes inflammation and scarring.
Oh, wow, that sounds painful.
Yeah, and it reduces your bladder's capacity.
Do you have to pee all the time?
Yeah, and it's painful, and there's blood in your urine.
It's crazy how much damage it can do.
And the worst part is, ketamine is a painkiller, so you might not even feel the damage at first.
Oh, wow. So you could be messing yourself up without even knowing it.
Yeah, and by the time you feel it, it could be really bad.
It's scary.
And there's this myth going around that if you cook ketamine, like microwave it,
What?
it eliminates the stuff that hurts your bladder.
People believe that.
Yeah, but our sources say your kidneys don't care what form it's in, the damage still happens.
That's messed up. People need to know that.
Yeah, it's dangerous misinformation. Like, they think they're being safe, but they're not.
Absolutely. Harm reduction needs to be based on facts.
Right, and the good news is that if you stop using heavily,
Okay.
your bladder can sometimes heal itself.
That's good. So there's hope.
Yeah, but if you keep going, you risk needing your bladder removed.
Whoa, that's a whole other level of serious.
Yeah, it's major surgery, life-altering.
It's a stark reminder of the potential for harm, right?
Yeah, and then we hear from Amy, used to be known as Ketty Amy.
Ketty Amy, what a name.
Yeah, her story started in Ibiza. She was working there.
Party Central.
And it was just a fun drug at first, you know?
I can see how that happens, Ibiza and ketamine.
Yeah, but then it turned into using it alone and feeling depressed.
That's how it starts, right?
Yeah, and at her worst, 3 to 4 grams a day.
Oh, wow. That's heavy.
Yeah, and she felt like the drug had, like, possessed her.
Taken over her life.
Yeah, but she went to rehab, and she's sober now.
That's great.
And she talks about how, like, low self-esteem and wanting to fit in played a big role in her addiction.
Yeah, that's so common, right? Trying to fill a void.
Yeah, and she almost needed her bladder removed and even had suicidal thoughts.
It's scary how fast it can spiral.
Yeah, like with ketamine, it seems like the consequences hit harder and faster than with other drugs.
I've heard that. It's like a quick descent.
But then the story takes a total turn, right?
What do you mean?
We're seeing ketamine emerge as a treatment for mental health.
Really? Like therapy?
Yeah, IV ketamine therapy, people are calling it revolutionary.
That's wild.
And it's being used for depression, anxiety, chronic pain, PTSD, even addiction.
Like a miracle cure.
Well, not quite, but it seems to work differently than other treatments.
Okay, how so?
It's like it goes to the root of the problem, you know?
I'm listening.
And we've got this guy, Alex. He tried 5E ketamine therapy because he felt stuck after a divorce.
I can imagine. Divorce is tough.
Yeah, and he was nervous. He'd never used it recreationally.
Makes sense. It's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, but during the infusion, he said he felt really calm and he had this incredible clarity.
Like a weight lifted off his shoulders.
Yeah, and he felt safe because it was all medically supervised.
That's important, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And he did have some disorientation afterward.
I guess that's to be expected.
But overall, he said it was transformative.
Wow. So it actually worked.
He even talked about, like, merging with the universe.
Whoa, that's deep.
And getting these profound insights. And he said it was more helpful than talk therapy.
That's amazing, but what's actually going on in his brain?
We'll get to that, but it's fascinating, right?
Yeah, it's like a whole new world of possibilities.
And it's not just IV drips either.
What else?
In 2019, the FDA approved a ketamine nasal spray, esketamine.
Oh, wow. So it's becoming mainstream medicine now.
Yeah, and it's for people with severe depression.
So it's not just for experimental therapy anymore.
Right, and they're even looking at it for PTSD and alcoholism.
Wow, so many applications.
We have this guy, Timmy, from a study. They were trying to reduce alcohol consumption.
Okay, how?
Using ketamine to, like, disrupt memories linked to drinking.
That's interesting. So like breaking the association.
Yeah, and it did seem to reduce his drinking at first.
That's promising. But I wonder about the long-term effects.
Yeah, and then there's Theo Vaughn. He tried 5E ketamine therapy for his anger issues.
Theo Vaughn, the comedian?
Yeah, and he had these super intense dreamlike experiences.
Like what?
Like feeling like he was with his deceased father and seeing his mother as a child.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah, he described it as like sliding down the edge of the universe.
Intense.
But even though it was profound for him, he didn't find it a long-term solution for his anger.
I guess it's not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Right, and it's important to remember everyone's experience is different.
Totally.
So how does ketamine actually do all this stuff in the brain?
$1 million question.
Our sources call it a dirty drug, meaning it doesn't just target one thing.
Oh.
It affects a bunch of different systems.
Makes sense, given everything we've talked about.
Yeah, and a key part seems to be glutamate.
Glutamate, that's the neurotransmitter, right?
Yeah, super important for brain cell communication.
So ketamine messes with that somehow.
Yeah, at high doses, like when it's used as an anesthetic,
Right.
it blocks glutamate activity.
Which shuts things down, right?
Right, but at lower doses, like recreational use or the nasal spray,
Okay.
it actually ramps up glutamate production.
So it does the opposite.
Yeah, and that can lead
Okay.
to hallucinations and those altered perceptions of reality.
So it all depends on the dose.
Yeah, high dose, shut down, low dose, amped up.
Makes sense.
And here's what's really interesting for mental health.
Okay, tell me.
Low-dose ketamine might actually help the brain build new connections between neurons.
Like rewiring the brain.
Yeah, these connections are called synapses, and that's like neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections.
I've heard of that. It's like the key to learning and stuff, right?
Yeah, and it seems crucial for ketamine's antidepressant effects.
Interesting.
Like it might reverse the connection loss from long-term stress and depression.
So it's literally rebuilding the brain.
That's what it looks like, and that's a huge difference from traditional antidepressants like Prozac and Zoloft.
Yeah, they usually take weeks to work, right?
Yeah, they mainly work on serotonin.
So different mechanism then.
Completely, and ketamine can work super fast, sometimes within 24 hours.
That's incredible, especially for people who need immediate relief,
Right, and it's promising for treatment-resistant depression.
where nothing else has worked.
Yeah, but there are still a ton of unknowns.
Of course, it's still early days, right?
Yeah, researchers are trying to figure out how ketamine affects different people.
Yeah.
Short-term, long-term, how to make the benefits last.
Right, we need to know more before we can really embrace it, right?
Exactly, and there's the worry about frequent use leading to harm.
Yeah, like any drug. Too much of a good thing.
And doctors are still saying ketamine should be a last resort for depression.
I mean, it's powerful stuff. We need to be cautious.
Absolutely. So, I mean, looking at all this, ketamine is a seriously complex substance.
Totally. It's like it has a split
It's
personality.
a recreational drug with real dangers, addiction, that bladder damage.
Scary stuff.
But then it's this life-saving anesthetic, too, on battlefields and in hospitals.
And now it could be a key at treating mental health issues.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing.
It really is. It makes you think about how we view drugs.
It really does. And it all started as, what, a horse tranquilizer?
Yeah, who would have thought?
I mean, it sounds silly, but it shows you how powerful this stuff really is.
Yeah. No matter how we try to categorize it, it's potent.
And it makes you think, right?
About what?
Our relationship with these substances.
Yeah, how we use them, why we use them.
We're looking for escape and we're looking for healing.
Two sides of the same coin, maybe.
Yeah, and ketamine seems to be caught in the middle.
It's a fascinating story, for sure.
And as we learn more about it, who knows what the future holds?
That's the exciting part.
It's a lot to think about, for sure.
Yeah, definitely food for thought.
Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for listening.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.